Good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Monroe Carmen. I am president of the club and editor-at-large at Bloomberg Business News. I'd like to welcome club members and their guests in the audience. I see we have a full house. This is the third full house we've had this year, so our guests should be flattered. I'd also welcome you, those of you watching on C-SPAN or listening to this program on National Public Radio or the Global Internet Computer Network. Before introducing our head table, I'd like to remind you all of our coming speakers. On Wednesday, November 29th, Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Edward Albee will be with us. On Thursday, December 14th, George David, Chief Executive Officer of United Technology, will discuss his thoughts on a national strategy for educating employees in a time of corporate restructuring. And on Friday, December 15th, John Sweeney, the new president of the AFL-CIO, will talk about his agenda for American workers. Transcripts and video and audio tapes of Press Club luncheons are available by calling 1-800-NPC-2334. I'm also pleased to announce the publication of a new book, the National Press Club's Best Contemporary Speakers. The book contains 13 of the best speeches made during the year of 1994. And to order a copy, again, the number is 1-800-NPC-2334. If you have any questions for our speaker, you'll find cards at the table. Write your questions on the cards, pass them up, and I will ask as many as time permits. And now I'd like to introduce our head table guests and ask them to stand briefly when their names are called. From your right, Lou Pearlman, author of School's Out and contributing editor of Forbes ASAP. Roger Fillion, telecommunications correspondent for Reuters. Rod Kukrow, editor of Multimedia Daily. Larry Williams, technology editor, Knight Ridder Newspapers. Vicki Walton-James, deputy bureau chief, Chicago Tribune. Andrew Glass, Washington bureau chief, Cox Newspapers, and a computer junkie. Robert Siegel, host of All Things Considered on National Public Radio. Mark Johnson, Media General News Service and chairman of the National Press Club Speakers Committee. Mark Lewin, Washington technology correspondent for Business Week. Christy Wise, freelance journalist and member of the Speakers Committee who arranged today's luncheon. Thank you very much, Christy. Carl Malamud, president of Internet Multicasting Service. Joe Johns, Capitol Hill correspondent for NBC News. Jube Shiver, financial correspondent of the Los Angeles Times. And Wendy Koch of Hearst Newspapers. Our guest today is Mr. Everywhere. He's been on the David Letterman Show, the Today Show, NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, Nightline, National Public Radio. His picture has graced the covers of Newsweek and Working Woman magazine, just to mention a few recent exposures. Today, we're privileged to have Bill Gates with us. The founder and chief executive officer of Microsoft Corporation is here to discuss his vision of computing's future, as set forth in his new book, The Road Ahead. To Mr. Gates, the future looms as another daunting challenge for Microsoft. The man who designed the software that created the personal computer revolution wants his company to be out front in the next electronic revolution. That revolution, in his view, will see the development of the global network that eventually will link all of the world's computers, the so-called information superhighway. Mr. Gates knows the odds are against Microsoft. No computer company has yet led two such revolutions. Nonetheless, he promises to defy historical tradition. And don't bet against him. His genius transformed Microsoft from nothing to a $6 billion a year company. Today, it dominates computer software markets with a 90% share of desktop PC operating systems and a 42% share of the worldwide PC software market. That phenomenon has made Bill Gates one of the richest, if not the richest, man on earth. Who knows whether the Sultan of Brunei would challenge that statement? Mr. Gates' net worth is estimated at $15 billion, give or take a few billion. That's enough money to earn him a line in the federal budget debate. He has so much cash that he's donating the proceeds from his new book to finance the development of technology in the classroom. Now, Mr. Gates, I should point out we have a computer training center in the library over there if you want to stop by on your way out. The Gates vision of the future contains many exciting prospects. Let me whet your appetite with just a few of them. There's the wallet, the computer wallet of the future. It will substitute for most of the things you now carry: credit cards, appointment books, reading material, tape recorders, cellular phones, calculators. It will also allow you to receive and send electronic mail and faxes, monitor weather and stock reports, record information, and even play games. And it will store digital money that will link to a store's computer and allow to pay for what you order without having to wait in that damn cash register line. And there's even more exciting prospects. I mean, in Mr. Gates' world, you can anticipate virtual dating, virtual marriage, virtual sex, and even virtual children, I suppose. Mr. Gates is accustomed to imagining things before others do. He wrote his first software program at age 13. 3 years later, he and his high school buddies in Seattle experienced their first thrill of making a computer terminal obey orders. At Harvard, Gates and his friend Paul Allen envisioned the potential of personal computers, and today, Microsoft's market dominance draws the admiration of computer users and business leaders, the wrath of competitors, and the scrutiny of the U.S. Department of Justice. None of that deters our guest from what he loves, from doing what he loves most, finding new ways to make powerful machines obey. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a hearty press club welcome to Bill Gates.
It's great to be here. This is my first time speaking at the press club. I saw one other person speak here. I just happened to be flipping the channels and ended up on C-SPAN, and it was Ted Turner. And it was a fascinating speech. I remember something about clitorectomy or something like that. It's kind of stunning. A few months later, the guy he was talking about is bidding $8 billion to buy him out. So I hope I can come up with something as dramatic as that. I did want to make one formal statement at the start of my speech. Somebody wrote this down for me. We decided that we would explicitly, definitely close the door so there was no more speculation. I will not run next year for president. Now, I want to say that's not because I don't know my way around the Capitol. I was a page in the United States Congress. In fact, that's really the only job that I ever got paid for other than running Microsoft. And it was a fun time. It was an election year. McGovern was the Democratic candidate, and I was a Democratic page. I was the only Democratic page who was for McGovern, though, so it's kind of interesting time to learn about DC. Well, after I was a Page, I went through a long period of not coming to DC. The first 16 years of Microsoft's history, we were busy at work building great software products and didn't really have to think much about political issues. And I think it's a real tribute to the American system that the entire PC industry and all of the great companies in it thrived without having to curry for political influence or getting involved in putting lots and lots of their resources into lobbying. Today our industry is moving into a new phase, and it's a phase where the PC is more than just a tool for an individual. It's becoming a tool of communication. And so now we're entering a realm where there are a great number of laws that touch on communications that are of importance to our industry. Just to look over the last few years, issues like free trade with NAFTA or the World Trade Organization, communications deregulation, that we're very enthused to have some type of deregulation take place, bills like encryption restrictions that make it a little more difficult to do business here and export software than we'd like, or most recently an immigration bill that we've taken a strong position against because it'll make it very difficult for us to hire skilled workers and bring people in to make teams to do all of our work essentially here in the United States. It's a very exciting time in our business, and that's why I decided to write the book. Almost everywhere I go, the interest in the future, how it's going to be different, how people should get ready for it, what they should worry about, that is a topic on everyone's mind. In my book, I allow my optimism and my excitement to show through. I think most of the things that will come about because of the advance in personal computers and low-cost communications will be wonderful things, will provide people with the opportunity to learn whatever they want to learn, to control their schedules, to reach out and know what's going on. Now, there are a lot of concerns that come up whenever I talk about this so-called highway. The highway is actually a term I don't like at all because it implies a sense of distance, which in fact this is eliminating. It implies everybody going the same place, which this is the opposite of that. People can do what they choose, do things with other people, find other people to do it with, or just go off on their own. And finally, the highway raises the possibility of the government having to finance all of this and stepping in to set the standards, which would neither be a good approach or the one that would allow the marketplace to find out how this all should be put together. But in the areas of concerns, there is certainly a lot that the government needs to do. Concerns include privacy. Does this mean that everything I ever buy, everything I ever do will be out there and traded around commercially? What about haves versus have-nots? Rich versus poor, urban versus rural, old versus young. Those are very tough issues. This morning I spoke out at Georgetown, and the focus of that event was education and how these computers can improve the educational experience. I'm a big believer in that. In fact, I think that is the greatest opportunity provided by these advances. But there, once again, there's an issue of how much each country will decide to focus additional resources in the educational sector to allow students who grow up to have access not only to a computer, but a computer hooked up to this worldwide internet where so much great material is available more and more every day. The internet is a wild thing. It's what I call a gold rush. You know, there's a lot of excitement. People are willing to believe that every new company, every new thing around the internet holds great possibilities. And a gold rush atmosphere has certain benefits. It means the level of investment by media companies, communications companies, PC companies is really quite fantastic. We'll certainly look back on these years, 3 or 4 years from now, and say, wow, what a lot of excesses, what a lot of things that really didn't pan out. And yet some things will come through. I use the term gold rush rather than mania because I am a firm believer that what's going on at the heart of it, it is very important. So there is gold. It may be buried very deep. It may be buried in different places than people think it is, but it's a great thing. This is an area where our country is way out in front. You take almost every aspect of what this entails, the fiber optic switches, the software, the chips, the content coming from media companies, and the opportunity to set global standards and have global markets. U.S. companies are out in front in almost every one of those areas. So we should make sure the U.S. market stays ahead. Every country I go to, the biggest concern I hear is, how far ahead is the U.S. of my country? Well, since we don't have deregulation, in a sense, we're not really at the starting line. And so I'm certainly a fan of moving ahead aggressively. This internet discussion has gotten so broad, we actually went out and talked to some customers. In fact, we found a musician down in Bermuda who had a very good perspective on what is the state of the art, what's going on with all these digital products. And we made a little video where we've got this guy from Bermuda talking about all this. So I just wanted to quickly show you what is his view of the state of the art.
It's digital, man. It's really clean. If you have a satellite dish on the lawn and a computer is your best friend, you spend your free time cruising the info bomb. You're on the net for hours on end. If you think you understand McLuhan and all the deals that Dilla is pursuing, if cyberspace is your kind of place and you're a technophile at heart, you're state of the art. Oh yeah, you're state of the art.
Padre, sono 6 settimane da quando ho fatto il backup del mio disco fisso.
Dimmi, figliuolo.
Ho provato a entrare nel computer del Vaticano, ma il loro codice d'accesso è impenetrabile.
Oh, grazie al cielo.
E
c'è ancora?
sì, ho avuto cattivi pensieri a riguardo della suora che compare nello spot televisivo della IBM.
Per la tua penitenza mediterai per mezz'ora sulla homepage di Madre Teresa.
E non sa per caso la sua URL?
http://www.mom.dolente.sol.
Grazie, padre.
Reciterai pure 3 Pater Noster immediatamente dopo il download.
Grazie, padre.
E a proposito della suora
Sì?
che appare nello spot di IBM,
Sì?
è solo un'attrice, sai.
Mille grazie, padre.
Per me, io preferisco gli spot in cui compariva il mitico Charlie Chaplin.
You got the latest in technology and an ISDN connection. You use acronyms without apology and have a digital obsession. If you think the best home pages are really cool because they're outrageous. If you like to hack another guy's univac and you think that makes you smart, you're state of the art. Oh yeah, you're state of the art.
Have you ever worn a fax machine on your head? You will. And the company that will make money every time you use it?
You take $1 trillion gamble, grab a piece of the future now. Join the frenzy content scramble, buy up the technical know-how. Take advantage of deregulation with a superhighway demonstration. Can you spell converge? Are you willing to merge and put a horse behind the cart? Your state of the art. Oh yeah, your state of the art.
With the Web of Wealth system, you can start today with an online service, then run an interactive television system from the comfort of your own living room. You'll learn how to make deals, do lunch, and take 15% of the gross. So get John Avris's amazing Web of Wealth system by calling this toll-free number today.
Thank you. Thank you. Friends, before I discovered my Web of Wealth system, I was working 2 menial jobs. I couldn't even afford to buy my wife a used car. But today, I'm on wife number 4, and they all drive fabulous cars just like this. Thank you. How did I do it? By realizing that venture capitalists have to turn ordinary people like you and me into millionaires, or they don't get rich either. Plus, just mention the internet in your business plan, and they won't care if you're on parole. You'll be funded. I guarantee it. Why? Because as this chart proves, soon there'll be more internet than people. Folks, nobody understands the internet, but everyone's afraid of being left out. With my Web of Wealth, you can be a part of this explosive growth.
Yeah, I'd really like to be on that superhighway to fame and riches. So, could you sign me up today to the Web of Wealth?
My point to you is that everyone has some worthless content languishing around in their garage, some weird little fetish tucked away in some closet. Please put it on the net, and you too in days will be a global sensation. Folks, everyone is cruising the net, from busy executives eager to expand their mind to people with so much time on their hands they just don't know what to do. It's how they stay informed about what's hot, what's not. Folks, let's hear from some of the thousands of people who have used my Web of Wealth system.
I started my first software company with a high school buddy. It turned out okay, but since then I've discovered the Web of Wealth, and Hollywood's beat a path to my door. Thank you, John Avris.
Believe me, it's so easy to get into the online service business. If I can do it, so can you.
Order John Avris's Web of Wealth system today and get into the digital age. Operators are standing by now. You'll be banking, you'll be ordering pizza, and you'll be sending mail with a $12,000 computer instead of 32-cent stamps.
Before we discovered the Web of Wealth system, my friends and I were just struggling filmmakers.
But now we've got our very own media company.
And thanks to the Web of Wealth, we're no Mickey Mouse operation.
Oh yeah, man. We're making a place in history. The future is out there and so are we. We're the avant-garde, held in high regard, with a big head start. Oh yeah, cause we are state of the art, state of the art, state of the art. Oh yeah, man. State of the art. Oh yeah.
My most recent encounter with the internet phenomena was after I went to dinner in Seattle last week. I was going back to my car, and a gentleman came up to me and was asking for money. I wasn't quite sure what to do, but he mentioned that I should visit his internet page and gave me his URL. And I thought, well, that's such a good line, even if he really doesn't have one. So I gave him some money and wondered, will even homeless people have home pages in this environment? The opportunity to improve the market mechanism, the way that we reach out to one another, whether it's people with common political interests, people we want to learn something with, staying in touch with relatives, finding resources that today are hard to get at, whether it's people who want to work out of their home or information that the government has that is just hard to find, the opportunity really is quite incredible. One element of this is to think of political discourse and how it can become more sophisticated. Imagine you're reading an article about the budget, and it's very complex. It talks about a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that. Well, it's always hard to remember, okay, how is the budget spent now? What are these programs like? But this is an environment where the links back to that information would be there. The explanation of the positions for and against, the ability to see what your representative is thinking or what their record on this issue has been. All of that will be there at your fingertips, and you'll be able to find people who agree with you on whatever issue is important and go ahead and pursue a course of action, forming essentially a virtual community. The government's already taking some steps in this direction, but there are even more opportunities for it to be a model user in making its information be available online. This future is going to happen, and so the question isn't really to vote on whether it takes place. Rather, it's to shape it, to take best advantage of the positive things and make sure that we have a great broad discourse, not just technologists, but everyone who will be affected, about how we can mitigate some of the drawbacks and lead the way. And the goal of broadening that debate is really the reason I took the time to write a book, and hope people will like it. Thank you.
Now the hard part, the questions, all right? This is central to a lot of people here, so forget all that computer jargon. What they want to know is, over time, will computers put newspapers out of business?
Well, it certainly won't put reporters out of business. The desire to have high quality, well-edited information will be even greater in this environment. The news business may be somewhat different than it is right now. The ability for people to go out and essentially get a customized newspaper, where the fact that they're interested in certain sports or certain subject areas, they will have the computer compose for them the things that might be of greatest values. And so the electronic world and the print world will coexist. If you take significant elements of the newspaper business model, like classified advertising, there will be fairly quickly a significant portion of classified usage that moves to the interactive world. It's easier to find products, get information, send mail messages to people who have internet ads than it is for people who simply take out a small piece of print. This will take some time before it really has an effect on the newspaper business as we know it today. And certainly newspapers will be in the vanguard of figuring out how to do it and take the skills that they have and make sure they're carried over into the new environment.
Thank you. Now, on a little broader plane, what industries are put in jeopardy by this computer revolution you talk about, and which industries will benefit the most?
Well, in a time of great change like this, the people are often find it difficult to predict where new demand will arise. Certainly as we moved labor off of the farm into manufacturing, as we moved labor from manufacturing into services, there were surprises about where the new demand emerged. There's no doubt, as we're more efficient in doing things, that I think we'll devote more of society's resources to education and medicine. Those are areas that are very, very important and can use the extra focus. The kind of companies that should look hardest at this are ones that are essentially middlemen, where the current system of distribution has them in the middle. And certainly in the financial sector, all the companies there are looking hard at what they want to do to adopt to this electronic world. People who are in retail sales businesses should try to think, for the products they sell, how quickly would demand shift into an electronic form. There are social elements that will determine how quickly this is all accepted. And yet, as the devices are available very broadly, as the costs come down, and it'll take us another 5 years before we've really gotten that cracked, most industries will change quite substantially. The notions of economies of scale, the notion of who your competition is, will be reshaped almost across the board.
If you could not invest in Microsoft, what company would you invest in?
Well, stock picking is not my area of expertise. I think there are some great companies in the information technology business, and it'll be a growth area. Another area that I'm very excited about is biotechnology. Other than these information tools, the greatest opportunity right now is revolutionary advances in medicine, that through understanding DNA and other advances and understanding biological systems will be very rapid in the next several decades. It's an area where it's very hard to pick out who the winners and losers will be. A lot of companies with kind of confusing names, but I think if you can sort that out, you'll find there's some wonderful investments in that sector.
What values will drive your online news service, the Microsoft Network News? The traditional values of journalism or something else?
Well, in the electronic world, we'll have many different things we do. Remember, our primary role as a company is to provide tools. Tools that let anyone author whatever they want, whether it's Microsoft Word or programming tools. And the main focus for those tools will be doing content for the internet. Windows and Windows NT will be platforms that allow anyone to go into publishing very, very easily. One of the forms of disintermediation that will take place here is you'll find reporters who today have been columnists in newspapers will be able to go out on their own and use the brand awareness to offer a column that once we have the transaction mechanisms in place, they could even charge as little as 1 cent to read their column, and if they're popular enough, that'd be a great economic proposition. Our role in the news is not the main thing that we'll be doing. We are looking at a couple of different ideas. One of the most exciting things we did was hire Michael Kinsley to come work for us and really do some experimentation with taking a set of writings or columns that have a point of view and involve the audience. Let them express their ideas, talk about how they feel about things, poll the audience. And so over the next year, we'll be trying out some new things there, and it's great to have his energy behind pushing the state of the art there. We also, in our Microsoft network, take all the newswire feeds and do regular news summaries based on all of that data. So the area where it's worth watching what we do, first and foremost is the tools and platforms, and second is perhaps some of these things we do with Kinsley will be groundbreaking approaches.
Is it true that you proposed to the Prime Minister of Canada that your Microsoft News Network could replace the country's entire public education system?
No? I guess in the gold rush atmosphere, the reliability of rumors is even lower than normal. But, you know, the key to education is having great teachers, and it's that individual involvement. And computers fit into that in terms of letting the students go off and explore the knowledge and then come back to a group and get the kind of positive reinforcement and working with other children. And so it's a very complex topic. As I said, I talked for about an hour this morning, and we're involved with the National Education Association and doing lots of grants with schools, doing grants with libraries to get them involved, so even people who are out of the normal school system can come in and get access to online services. But there are no simple solutions in the U.S. or in any other country.
Do you believe that distributed networks, such as the Internet, hold the key to future operating systems?
Well, certainly the original vision of a computer on every desk and in every home assumed that the price of communications and the price of computing would drop to be near zero. And it's kind of amazing. Microsoft is now 20 years old. It took that long for communication prices to come down so that we got a critical mass through the internet of electronic publishing. And it's not that the technical work during that time period was very slow, but rather because of the structure of the communications industry, it just took a long time for offerings to be there. And it's the internet which buys essentially on a bulk bid basis rather than forcing individuals to be lured in through marketing type approaches. That's where you got the kind of volume and growth that drove the equipment makers to build the new equipment and the fiber to be laid. And so it's wonderful that that finally took place. That will be the driving force for software tools, for operating systems, for productivity software, and for new style publishing for decades to come.
Who should bear the cost of upgrading the Internet's infrastructure to meet the needs of expanding users? Should it remain a government public system?
Well, first, the Internet is not today a government public system. When you're signing up to the Internet and doing commercial work on the Internet, assuming you're not a government employee, there's no government funding that's allowing that to happen. This is a self-sustaining system. It's actually kind of complicated how the backbone providers get together and interconnect their systems and have these huge switches. But this thing is a commercially funded activity. It was bootstrapped out of some work that DARPA, Department of Defense, funded a long, long time ago. When I was back in Harvard in '73, we were working with TCP/IP that are the protocols that have emerged here. And that just reinforces the point. There was no huge breakthrough. What there was the drop in the price of communications that we could build this hypertext network and get it into wide-scale usage. And so the growth of the Internet will come as companies like the cable companies and the phone companies jump in and add to the work that companies like Netcom, PSI, UUNet, and a number of others have already done in building today's Internet. And so no government funding is required or expected.
The questioner says one of your senior executives has told him that Microsoft will soon own the Internet. Is that true? And what will you do with it?
Well, I'm sure that's just somebody trying to be provocative. And no Microsoft executive ever said anything of the kind. The Internet is an infrastructure. It's like saying somebody owns the electrical network or the water network. It's a network that allows data to flow, bits move, and so it can be used for an unbelievable variety of things. And anybody with a personal computer can put together their web page and be there and express themselves in any way that they choose. So it eliminates the barriers of that you have in broadcast media or in any media where there is a huge cost in terms of getting into distribution. Therefore, it's very, very exciting that we'll see lots and lots of people come onto the Internet. Now, just because you're on it doesn't mean anybody's going to go read your homepage. A lot of people have put up personal home pages and been disappointed to find nobody ever went there except maybe their close relatives. So there's still a question of, how do people find out about things? Who do they trust to lead them to where all the good stuff is? We do believe the Internet will make great software more valuable. There's a lot of work we're doing to have new products on the Internet, to adopt our products to the Internet, but there's no one who owns the Internet. And it's just like saying somebody owns the PC industry. No one owns the PC industry. There's a lot of great companies that are driving it forward.
Are you planning to put your digital art collection on the Internet?
I have a another activity called Corbus. It's a small company that's basically image archive. And their role is to go to people with great images, photographers, museums, whoever, and enter into royalty contracts with them, and then index all of those images up on an internet server so that anyone can go out there and browse these images. Now, Corbus will only own a small percentage of the images. They'll be primarily a middleman who's invested in making it easy to find things and understand what the prices are and how the rights clearances work. If somebody wants to get one of those images and just look at it or use it in personal documents, then that can be very, very inexpensive. If somebody wants to take an image and publish with it, then there's a little bit higher fee that has to be paid. But the idea is to expand the access to all these great images. For example, the Bettman collection, which was a historical collection up in New York that Corbus recently purchased, of the 10 million images in there, only 200,000 have ever been seen by the public because it's so hard to access all of these things that they're all sitting there in file drawers. And these are wonderful images which over time we'll put into the index and get online so that anybody can just sit down and browse and see what's there.
This member here says that he recently received a brief flyer from Microsoft asking if I could imagine the company competing in the $50 billion mainframe database market. Can you tell us anything about your plans to enter this market?
Okay. We're certainly in the database market with a product called SQL Server. It's a very competitive market with companies like Oracle, Sybase, Informix. IBM is also in that business. It's not so much mainframe focused now because all the new applications are moving down onto the PC platform using Windows NT as the central operating system and doing what are called graphical client-server applications. Our database work we're very excited about. In the world of connectivity, databases have to be more efficient, more secure, easier to work with, and so there's lots of opportunities for everybody who's in that arena.
How many upgrades are expected for Windows 95? Will they come this quarter or the first quarter of next year? And what's your timetable for announcement of Windows 96?
The Windows product is one where we receive an unbelievable amount of feedback from customers. We get over 1 million calls a month talking to us about what they'd like to see, what they find confusing. And we enter every one of those calls into a database, and that's the primary driver of all the new work that we do. We can only do major new versions every 2 to 3 years. So it'll be quite some time before there's a really major release of our desktop Windows product. We will have some intermediate releases, but those aren't the kinds of things that applications developers will depend on. It'll just be the more enthusiastic users will see the features there and may choose to gravitate to those at that time. In terms of Windows 95, we're well over 10 million copies in use. This is a product that we introduced about 3 months ago, and the sales have really been quite fantastic. Most new computers you go out and buy today, you'll find that Windows 95 is there, and the upgrade rate has been very, very good. But we're not a company that does forecasts or talks about future financial figures. It's just something we don't do.
What is teledesic? Are you committed to seeing the project through to launch and operations?
Well, Teledesic is another company that a friend of mine, Craig McCaw, got me excited about. It involves low Earth orbit satellites. In this case, is about 40 miles above the Earth, which is unbelievably low. Geostationary satellites are at about 26,000. And so these satellites move over the surface of the Earth at a very high speed. And at that height, it takes about 880 satellites to make sure that there will always be a satellite nearby so you can have continuous communications. It's basically, to use a technical term, it's a ATM network in the sky where you have the satellites beaming ATM signals to each other. It's very exciting. If it works, what it does is it brings high-speed connections to everyone on the Earth. And so even in places where you have low density, certainly in Asia or even in rural parts of America, you'd be able to provide very high bandwidth digital connections. Now, teledesic is a very high-risk operation. There are regulatory, financial, and technical challenges that it has to face. And there are many other companies working on similar systems, most of which are not as ambitious as the teledesic system. Like the Iridium Motorola system is 66 satellites, and it looks like that one's moving ahead. Anyway, there's a number of people trying to get digital communications out there. The systems vary in terms of how much bandwidth they'd offer and what the pricing would have to be for them. So Craig got me excited about that. I made an investment, and they say they're making good progress. They'll have to raise before they can launch all these satellites, probably about $6 to $8 billion. And so certainly we're going to need more than Craig and myself to get enthused and involved to get it off and going. But I'm very pleased with the progress, including the frequency clearance work that they made some progress on just recently.
In your book, you talk about what you call the documented life, in which no conversation will be private. Every human transaction will be recorded on something or other. How can you assume such a dispassionate, neutral attitude toward this sacrifice of privacy?
My tears should have been imprinted into every copy of those pages. The point was simply that technology will allow you to record as much or as little as you choose. President Nixon chose to live, at least in audio, a documented political life, and he lived to regret it. So, that was a choice that he happened to make. I don't think it's completely unreasonable that society might say that, when a doctor's doing an operation, that there would be some type of recording of that going on to, minimize the liability problems. I don't think it's unreasonable that, say you have a city where the police have been overly active somehow, that you'd want to record some of their activities for a period of time. I think if you get a period where there's quite a bit of terrorism in a city, you might take the boundary and say, maybe the police should have access to video images of what's going on, who's moving where, so we can track down this terrorism. These are political and individual questions. I'm simply pointing out in the book that you can record the number of bits it takes to take the audio and the video and the various things that go on throughout your life, that the cost of storage for that in digital form is modest enough that the flexibility exists for that to be used where it would be appropriate. So it's a fine example of something where people should start thinking about it, there should be debate, and I'm sure different countries will take on different approaches.
The questioner says that the security of electronic communications is the next major hurdle to cross. Where do you see this issue of security going? Who's going to provide it?
Well, the internet today is totally insecure. 90% of the messages that appear to come from me do not come from me. And you can pretend to be someone else very, very easily. Now, as the system evolves, there'll be places on the internet where you have to use your real name, and you'll be able to tell a mail message that really comes from a real person. There'll also be areas where you can go in anonymously and say things. Now, there are some tricky issues, and I talk about this in the book, to take the current libel laws or the laws against pornography and decide, how those apply in this electronic medium. I don't think a straightforward application of the current rules will actually work perfectly, and I explain what I think the best solution to that is in the book. The security has two problems. One is that when you're having a conversation with someone, no one should be able to intercept it. Actually, the technology for that is very good. There's a little bit of a problem in that the current laws won't let us export that software technology, which means it can't be used broadly on the internet. The kind of security that the government allows you to export today is pathetic. I mean, it can be broken trivially, and that is finally becoming a real problem where software companies that don't develop in the U.S. Have a bit of an advantage there. Anyway, that's a special topic. But securing conversations, assuming there's no governmental problem, that's very straightforward. The hardest problem is authentication, making sure when you walk up to a computer system that you really are who you say you are, that it's not somebody who found your ID card or guessed your password. And there's a lot of innovative ideas about how to identify someone and make sure it's them in the conversation, so then they can look at the mailbox and start sending mail and doing financial transactions. And there's room for innovation there in authentication. Once you're on the network, though, the software technology is fantastic at preserving security.
How do we guarantee, or can we, that the benefits of technology are available to people of all income levels, or are we moving inexorably to a society of the technological elite and the rest of us?
I think the role of technology will be, in a sense, a little bit like books were, say, 100 years ago, where they are valuable for somebody who's interested and motivated. You want to make sure that they can get access. And that's where schools and libraries come in. They have a major role to play to make sure that, say, in the next 5 to 10 years, as these tools really get pretty darn decent, that a lot of people who want to reach out and use them will have that opportunity. It's going to take a lot of groups working together, including the government looking at these issues, to make that work. I talk in the book about technology actually reducing the gap between developed nations and developing nations. Any developing nation that has a reasonable educational infrastructure, take India for example, their skilled people will be more able to compete in the world market, not only for manufacturing, that's already happened with low-cost transportation, but now with the electronic networking and the kind of video conferencing and being able to advertise what services they offer and be electronically matched up with people who have those needs, they'll be able to compete for any type of service work, by putting up their references and their availability and their pricing. And so there'll be a tendency, today if you want to predict somebody's income level, the first question you should ask them is, what country are you from? Once this is pervasive, the best question to ask them will be, what is your educational level? Because your merit-based skills, no matter where you're located on the earth, you will find a market for those skills, even if you, for some reason, want to work out of your house or you want to be in a different place. So the tendency will be to reduce the gap between countries, and each country is going to have to look at how they make sure within their country that those choices are there. Now, I don't think we should do that prematurely. Today, PCs and the internet are not something that we should just, boom, throw into the budget. Hey, let's buy one for everyone. We should wait till the prices come down. They're a little bit better. We're essentially bootstrapping off of the business market largely to get this thing to critical mass. And that is a great way to let it evolve.
This one comes from a postal employee who's looking ahead to his future. Do you think electronic mail will replace hard copy mail as a vehicle for conducting the nation's business and personal correspondence?
To some degree, I think absolutely. The efficiency of electronic mail is really quite fantastic. And I talk in the book how we use essentially a market mechanism so that if somebody wants to send you junk mail, they'll have to pay you to take your time to read it. So if you never want to read junk mail, that's fine. If you see the bounty that they're offering with the junk mail is adequate, then great. And they'll use your demographic to figure out how much they want to bid. If you bought, say, a BMW before and there's a new model that's coming out, they may bid $1 to get you to go through and read their brochure. If it's just some local shopping circular, they may bid 1 cent. And so you can keep that in folders and go back when you have free time, if ever, and receive the rewards for reading those messages. Anyway, it's in this new world, you want to make sure that you can't be interrupted when you don't want to be interrupted. You don't want the equivalent of somebody ringing your phone or somebody who you gave your phone number to a long time ago, but you don't want to change your phone number because then you have to call everybody else. That is easily avoidable by us having the software work the right way. I do think electronic mail will come into widespread usage. It's a bootstrapping problem. If you have a group of people who you know use their electronic mail regularly, you'll send all short messages to them that way. But if only a few people in the group don't read their electronic mail or don't have it, then you have to go back to paper, and you might as well use that for everyone. It happens in my family. I've made sure everybody has electronic mail, so we can schedule events and talk about neat things that are going on. And it's sort of communication that's supplementary to what we always did before. It's not a reduction in the amount of face-to-face time or anything like that, but it lets us stay in touch in a closer way and send the same message out to lots of people, even coordinate our various activities. So not only in the business realm, in the business realm I think it's a must. Any business that doesn't use electronic mail today, I don't care what industry you're in, that is the first step towards getting ready for the information highways, to make sure your employees have access to electronic mail and use it regularly. And once you get to there, then you'll start to understand about sending documents and forms and browsing the internet and all the things that come after that. But email is the first step. But even for people at home, this will become a big thing. I don't happen to agree with this RAND study, which says that the government ought to fund electronic mail for everybody. I almost can't believe it. I'll have to get a copy of the thing and read it, but from what I've heard, it sounds pretty radical.
All right, sir. Now, before we get to our famous last question, I have a couple of gifts for you. First, a certificate of appreciation for being with us today.
Thank you.
And secondly, a famous National Press Club coffee mug for the kitchen of your new home, if there's room for it. Now, the last question. Given the great financial success of Microsoft, given the enormous amount of your personal wealth, don't you think it's time to have a toll-free 800 number available for helping your software buyers through the learning process?
Well, we're certainly committed to help people with problems they have with the software. We spend over $500 million a year answering phone calls on our software. We spend more money answering phone calls on the software than the development budget for all of the software. And as I say, that's wonderful because it guides us in every new thing that we're going to do. With the internet, we'll be able to bring this support to a new level. We have got some new features in the software now where you can just type a question and we'll find the help topic that can help you. We record any problems you have, so when you get in touch with a technician, we can understand the history of how you've used that product. By using an internet connection, though, instead of just talking over the phone and saying, hey, I've got this funny thing on my screen, you'll be able to share your screen, and the technician will be able to step you through how to fix the problem. We estimate the calls will be much faster, much more effective, and that we'll be able to find the solution virtually all the time once we're using the computer as a mechanism to do that kind of support. And so we're investing a lot in those approaches. And because the internet, you pay for it on a fixed fee basis, if you're using an internet connection to do support, whether it's going to our bulletin boards or contacting our technicians, there's no long distance charges involved in that at all. And so that's the path we see to have better support and a toll-free approach to getting lots of help.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that interesting, informative talk today, and I thank you all for being with us. Good afternoon.
A pair of national